Pay close attention because what I'm about to share could bring you genuine relief and protect you from spending money you were never truly obligated to pay. Several months back, I sat down with a gentle, soft-voiced woman named Myra, 74 years old, a widow living on her own. She had recently handed over $890 for a bill she believed was absolutely required. The document looked completely legitimate. It was filled with formal, legal-sounding language. She told me I was scared that if I didn't pay it, someone would come after me. Myra is an intelligent woman. She carries herself with dignity, but fear pushed her hand toward her checkbook. And here's the part that changes everything. She didn't actually owe that money under the law. The legal system was on her side the entire time, but nobody had ever told her that. This video is dedicated to every older adult who has ever stared at a bill and quietly thought, I don't know how I'll manage this. Or even worse, I'm just too exhausted to fight back. Because here's what those companies are counting on. They're hoping you'll feel too overwhelmed to ask a single question, that you'll pay without a word, and that nobody will ever stand up beside you. But today, I will. I'm more than just an attorney. I've dedicated 15 years of my career to helping older Americans protect what rightfully belongs to them. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through 6 types of bills that many seniors feel pressured into paying but are not actually required to by law. Be sure to stay all the way to the end because the final one isn't just the most manipulative of all, it's also the one I see repeatedly pulling seniors into a cycle of paying over and over again. So grab a pen and paper or simply listen carefully, and if anything I mention reminds you of something you've personally gone through, drop it in the comments section below. Your experience might help another person feel a little less alone in their situation. And don't forget to tap the like button so this message can reach more people who truly need to hear it. Now, let's get started with one of the most misunderstood and fear-producing types of bills out there: unexpected medical charges. When Ellen opened her mailbox one afternoon, she was hoping to find a birthday card from her niece. What she found instead was a $100 bill from a specialist she had never actually met, sent from a hospital she believed was completely covered under her insurance plan. She sat at her kitchen table feeling confused and ashamed. She said, I don't even remember seeing that doctor, but what if not paying this ruins my credit score? Here's the reality. Many seniors, particularly after an emergency situation, get blindsided by medical bills they were never warned about beforehand. This tends to happen when a patient receives care from an out-of-network provider inside an in-network facility, or when a particular service wasn't properly pre-authorized. But under legislation like the No Surprises Act, you have real legal protection. If the care took place during an emergency or inside an in-network hospital and you never knowingly signed a consent form agreeing to extra charges, you often do not legally owe the full bill amount. That is a powerful place to begin. In my years of experience, I've discovered that many medical bills are inflated because of coding errors, unnecessary additional charges, or simple miscommunication between your physician and your insurance provider. And yes, that is frustrating, but it is also something you can address. You have the right to appeal the charge. You can request an itemized version of your bill. And if you feel uncertain, you can ask the provider directly. Can you show me the signed document where I agreed to these specific fees? A study conducted by the Kaiser Family Foundation revealed that 2/3 of patients never once attempted to appeal a medical bill. But among those who did take that step, more than 50% had their bill significantly reduced or dismissed entirely. If this has happened to you or to someone close to you, please remember this. Asking questions isn't causing trouble. It's protecting everything you've spent your lifetime working to build. And if a bill like this ever arrives in your mailbox again, take a slow, deep breath. Let your logical thinking take over. You have time on your side. You have legal rights. You are fully capable of handling this. Coming up, we'll talk about another hidden trap: debt collectors who contact you about someone else's loan, fully expecting that you don't know what the law actually says. 1 week after laying her husband to rest, Judith picked up the phone and heard these words: "Ma'am, you need to settle your late husband's outstanding balance today, or risk further action being taken." Her hands began to shake. She whispered back, "But I never signed anything. That was his card, not mine." This is the exact moment where grief collides directly with legal manipulation. Countless older adults, especially widows, are quietly coerced into paying off debts belonging to a loved one that they have absolutely no legal responsibility to cover. And in moments of deep sorrow, guilt becomes the most effective form of currency. Here's what the law clearly states: unless you co-signed the loan or were legally attached to the account in some formal way, you are not responsible for the debts left behind by a deceased person, not as their spouse, not as their child, and not simply as the surviving individual who happened to answer the phone. But debt collectors understand very well how to blur those lines. They'll send correspondence addressed to the estate while speaking to you as though the obligation is personally yours. They lean heavily on your confusion and even more heavily on your compassion and sense of loyalty. I've witnessed this scenario far too many times. One woman I worked with was receiving collection notices about her brother's outstanding medical debt. There was no shared account, no agreement of any kind, simply the same last name. She was on the verge of paying it until we asked one straightforward question: "Can you provide us with a signed agreement that includes her name?" They couldn't produce it. The calls stopped immediately after that. On an emotional level, this cuts incredibly deep, because when you've lost someone precious, you aren't only managing your grief, you're also trying desperately to maintain your own stability and sense of security. And behind every threatening letter is that quiet, underlying fear: if I don't pay this, am I somehow dishonoring their memory? Let me say this to you clearly and directly as your attorney. Grief should never arrive at your door with a balance attached to it. You are fully entitled to mourn your loss without being financially pursued by collectors. The Federal Trade Commission confirms this without question. Debt collectors cannot legally compel you to pay from your personal funds unless you are formally tied to the account in question. If they attempt to do so, demand written documentation. Request the original signed agreement. If they cannot provide it, you are free to walk away completely. No shame necessary, no guilt required. You are capable of doing this, one letter at a time, one phone call at a time, one firm boundary at a time. Next, we'll address something even more personal in nature: situations where a friend or neighbor claims you owe them money, but there's absolutely no paperwork to back up the claim. One quiet Sunday following church service, Maria received a message from a neighbor she hadn't spoken with in several months. It read, "Hey, about that $500 you borrowed from me during the lockdown period, when can I expect to get that back?" Maria sat completely still, frozen in place. She remembered this neighbor dropping off groceries during a difficult time. She remembered the act of kindness clearly, but she had no recollection whatsoever of agreeing to repay anything. This is the precise moment where genuine generosity gets twisted into a financial trap. Older adults, and particularly older women, are frequently targeted in these kinds of informal money situations. A simple favor quietly morphs into a formal demand. A helping hand suddenly becomes an unexpected bill. But here's the truth of the matter. If there is no written contract, no agreed-upon terms, and no supporting documentation of any kind, the claim is not legally enforceable. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not encouraging you to dismiss your conscience or your values. If you genuinely did borrow money and made a sincere agreement to pay it back, your integrity should absolutely guide you. But if someone brings up money months or even years years after the fact with no signed document, no text message, no email, and no bank record labeled as a loan, then the burden of proof rests entirely with them and not with you. I once supported a retired librarian who was being relentlessly pressured by a former caregiver who claimed she had borrowed $800 in cash years earlier. There was no written note, no signed agreement, nothing but pressure and the threat of sharing the story with others at her church. We asked for documentation. They had absolutely none to provide. The situation ended right then and there. On an emotional level, situations like this stir up some of the deepest fears imaginable. Will people think I'm being dishonest? Will this damage my reputation in the community? Could I simply be forgetting something important? It is completely understandable to ask yourself those questions. It is also entirely acceptable from a legal standpoint to hold firm and establish clear boundaries. Here's the essential point to carry with you. A verbal loan is extremely difficult to enforce in a court of law unless it has been thoroughly documented with clear terms, specific dates, and proper signatures. Courts generally do not uphold casual, informal promises that lack those foundational elements. And no, guilt does not qualify as a legally binding agreement between two parties. If someone approaches you carrying that energy of, "You owe me," here is exactly what you should do. Stay completely calm, ask them to provide proper documentation, and do not make any payment simply because you feel pressured in the moment. You can even say directly, "I don't recall this being a formal loan arrangement, and I need to speak with someone I trust before making any decisions." You have every right to pause and think things through, to protect your inner peace, and to stand by the actual truth rather than someone else's convenient version of events. You are more than capable of doing this. A single quiet boundary could easily save you hundreds of dollars. Next, we'll examine a bill that arrives in your mailbox even when you haven't used the service at all, and why you don't always have any obligation to pay it. 3 months after relocating to her son's home in Ohio, 76-year-old Mrs. Elaine Carter opened her mailbox and discovered a $527 gas bill from the townhouse she had left behind. She had already canceled her account properly, returned the keys, and hadn't been inside that property since the day she moved out. Yet here she was being told she owed money for weeks of service she had never once used. This type of situation happens far more often than most people realize. Seniors downsize their living situations, move in with family members, or transition into assisted living communities, and then weeks or even months later, a utility bill follows them like a persistent shadow. And here's what I want you to hear clearly and hold on to. If you no longer resided at that address, and the service was not under your name or within your control, you are not legally responsible for paying that bill. Sometimes utility companies simply fail to close accounts in a timely and proper manner. In other cases, a new tenant or even a property manager allows the service to continue running, hoping the previous resident, often a polite and trusting older adult, will simply pay the bill out of confusion or a misguided sense of obligation. I helped a retired librarian named Nancy who received a $380 water bill addressed to her old apartment 2 full months after she had already moved into a senior housing community. When we formally requested documentation, the company was unable to produce a meter reading, a service request, or even confirm that her name was properly associated with the account in question. The bill disappeared entirely the moment the company was held accountable to that standard. Here's your action plan if this ever happens to you. Request written proof of the exact dates of service, meter readings taken during that period, and the name on the official account. If you have a copy of your move-out notice or lease termination document, provide that as supporting evidence. If you've already relocated, ask someone you trust to check on the property in person, because sometimes utilities were never properly disconnected in the first place. And most critically, never pay a bill simply to avoid the inconvenience and stress of dealing with it. Making a payment could be interpreted legally as an admission that you accept responsibility for the charges. Under consumer protection laws across most states in the country, utility providers are obligated to verify their charges before they can pursue any collection action, and you have every legal right to dispute the bill formally in writing and request a complete investigation into the matter. You are fully capable of doing this. One composed phone call, one well-placed and confident question. That's frequently all it takes to protect both your finances and your peace of mind going forward. Now, let's examine a category of debt that stretches back many years and why even if someone is actively demanding payment from you, the law may be completely on your side. Mrs. Diane Morgan, 72 years old, was quietly sipping her morning tea when the telephone rang. A collector informed her she owed $3,200 on a department store credit card from well over a decade ago. Her hands trembled visibly. She barely had any memory of the card, let alone the specific debt attached to it. "If you don't pay," the voice said coldly and deliberately, "we will escalate this matter immediately." That moment right there is when fear merges with the natural haziness of memory. And that's precisely what certain collectors are banking on when they make those calls. But here's what I told her then, and what I want you to hold on to as well. In most states across the country, you legally cannot be sued for a debt once it has surpassed the statute of limitations, which is typically somewhere between 3 to 6 years for credit card debts and medical bills. That aged bill is legally uncollectible at that point. The real danger emerges when seniors, acting out of fear or a sense of moral obligation, make even a small payment on the account or verbally admit that the debt belongs to them. That single small gesture can legally restart the entire clock, providing the collector with a fresh and renewed timeline in which to potentially file a lawsuit. The law refers to these as time-barred debts. Collectors may still reach out to contact you about them, but they cannot legally force you to pay, and they cannot drag you into a courtroom unless you unknowingly grant them that permission through your own actions. I once assisted a widow living in Pennsylvania who was receiving serious threats over a personal loan that dated all the way back to 2006. The collector was using phrases like, "We are actively monitoring your credit and we still have the ability to report this account." But the moment we formally requested verification under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, they immediately backed down. No lawsuit was filed, no payment was made, and no harm came to her whatsoever. If this ever happens to you, stay calm and composed. Do not confirm any information over the telephone. Ask them to send you a written validation letter. They are legally required to prove that the debt is actually enforceable. Look up your specific state's statute of limitations or contact a local legal aid office for assistance. You are fully capable of navigating this. One small but deliberate action, like pausing before you answer or respond, can protect everything you've worked your entire life to build. And now, let's talk about something that is even more heartbreaking to witness. Situations where the bill wasn't even real to begin with. Just a carefully constructed scam designed specifically to exploit your trust and goodwill. Last winter, Mrs. Eleanor James opened an envelope that looked extremely serious and official, prominently stamped with the words, "Final Notice." It stated that she owed $389 for a home security system she had absolutely never signed up for or agreed to purchase. The letter included a customer identification number, a support phone line to call, and even her correct home address. Everything about it felt completely real and legitimate, but it wasn't. This is precisely how modern scammers operate today. Their fake bills look entirely professional and official. Their emails are carefully polished and formatted. Their phone representatives speak in calm but deliberately firm and authoritative voices. And their preferred targets are seniors who genuinely value order, peace of mind, and doing what they believe is the right and responsible thing. The danger here extends far beyond the money itself. It's the seed of self-doubt that these criminals plant deep inside you. That nagging thought of, what if they're actually right about this? That anxiety about missing a payment you might truly owe. That creeping worry that maybe you're being financially irresponsible somehow. Here is the legal truth you need to hear and remember. If you never signed up for the service in question, you owe absolutely nothing. Scammers gather small pieces of publicly available personal information and use them strategically to convince you that a completely fabricated bill is genuine and valid. And once you pay even once, they frequently return with additional demands expecting to collect again. I always advise my clients to trust their instincts completely. If something feels wrong or off in any way, don't rush into doing anything. Ask yourself honestly, did I ever actually sign any document? Have I ever spoken with this company before today? Why are they specifically requesting payment through gift cards, wire transfers, or prepaid debit cards? Legitimate, properly established companies will never demand unusual or unconventional payment methods, and they will never threaten immediate legal action without providing proper supporting documentation first. One practical tip I consistently give everyone: ask them directly for their full company name and official business license number, then search for them independently online. If you discover a trail of complaints or absolutely no record of their existence, you've almost certainly just avoided falling into a very costly trap. According to data published by the Federal Trade Commission, older Americans lose more than $3 billion every single year to various forms of fraud, and a significant portion of that devastating total comes from phantom billing schemes exactly like this one. But it doesn't have to happen to you. You have the right to ask every question you need answered, to delay any payment until you're completely satisfied, and to hang up the phone and verify everything independently. You still hold full control over this situation. Please share this particular portion of the video with someone you care about deeply. It genuinely might save them from being taken advantage of by people who prey on trust. And now, let's bring everything we've covered today together in a way that makes sense, because you deserve to live with genuine peace rather than constant financial pressure. Today, we've discussed medical bills you have every right to challenge and fight, debts that have already expired under the law, false and unsubstantiated financial claims made by others, including people you may know personally, and the rapidly growing number of fraudulent bills designed specifically to exploit your trust and sense of responsibility. Every single topic was chosen to help you reclaim control over your financial life. Because here is the fundamental truth: you were not raised in a world dominated by fine print contracts, automated billing systems, or sophisticated phishing emails. You came from a time when a simple handshake carried real and meaningful weight, and when a bill that arrived in the mail actually made complete logical sense. So if the modern system feels bewildering and overwhelming at times, please understand that is not your fault in any way. It is absolutely acceptable to slow down, to ask every question that comes to mind, and to say firmly and without apology, "I need more time before I make any decisions." You still possess all of your rights. You still have meaningful choices available to you. And most importantly, you still carry the full power to protect your peace of mind and financial security. One small, deliberate change can create an enormous and lasting difference in your life. If this video provided you with something valuable today, please take a moment to share it with someone you love. whether that's a neighbor, a sister, or a close friend. Your wisdom and willingness to pass this information along might protect their savings just as effectively as it can protect yours. And let us know in the comments, which bill are you planning to take a much closer look at this coming week? I am not simply a lawyer sitting behind a desk. I am someone who believes wholeheartedly that your calm, your dignity, and your sense of security should never be treated as just another monthly sacrifice you're expected to make.